I love my sister. I swear I do. But sometimes she does seem to want to kill me. Hello and welcome to the first ever official episode of Occasionally Insightful, the show that really is a mixed bag of somewhat organized chaos. I'm your host, Elisa, and today I don't really have a structure to the podcast. I know. I thought that since this is the first episode, I would just tell you a few stories about things that have happened to me in the past couple of weeks. I think that's a great way for you guys to get to know me, get to know the kind of person that I am, get to know the kind of chaos that I deal with in my day-to-day life. Actually, my life isn't that chaotic. I just like to be melodramatic and envision that everything is a bit more dramatic than it really is. I'm not a drama queen, but also I am a bit of a drama queen. I have a few stories to talk about. I promise you that not all of the episodes will be as eclectic and random and chaotic as today's might be. I do have plans for future episodes that will be a little bit more structured, a little bit more thematic, a little bit more helpful, dare I say insightful. But that's the premise of the whole show. The show is, I talk about my life. It's going to be a little bit random, a little bit all over the place, but occasionally we come across a gem of wisdom from me. Maybe you're lucky, maybe you're not. So today I wanted to talk about, like I said, a few things that have happened to me in the past few weeks. They are mundane, I suppose, not the most exciting stories, but that's life, isn't it? Life for the average human isn't crazy and exciting, and you're meeting celebrities and you're off on adventures, especially not in COVID times, let's be real. But I think that there is a certain comfort and ease and familiarity. That's the word I'm looking for. There's a certain familiarity in listening to someone talk about the sort of normal, everyday, kind of boring things that they do on a day-to-day basis. That's my personal opinion. I like listening to people, watching vlogs on YouTube or listening to podcasts where people are just, talking about the day-to-day life. There's a certain, I don't know, to me it feels boring. To you it might feel boring, but to some people, it could be interesting. Anyway, that's all a roundabout way for me to say I hope you enjoy the episode. And with that, let's get into the first story, which happened a couple of days ago. Okay, actually more than a couple of days ago. It was a Saturday, and at the time of recording, today's a Tuesday. So actually, no. You know what? We need to take it back. A couple of weeks ago now, my family and I took a bit of a staycation. We went to a nice hotel, about 10-15 minute drive away from where we live. And the hotel is attached to a very large shopping mall. Actually, it's a shopping mall that has 2 wings. That's how big it is. And each wing is itself a complete shopping mall, and it's huge. But together, you could spend 2 or 3 days and probably not get to every single shop. It feels massive. Anyway, we stayed at this pretty nice hotel. We stayed there for 2 nights? 3 nights? 2 nights, I think. I had the misfortune of having to share a room with my sister. My brother was, because he's the only boy, he's the only boy child in the family. He gets to have his own room, which, fair enough. But also, excuse me, I am the oldest child. I deserve my own room. I deserve my own privacy. Do I not? Anyway, I love my sister. I swear I do. But sometimes she does seem to want to kill me by turning the room into the literal North Pole. She loves the aircon. She loves wrapping herself up in a burrito. She loves, wearing several layers. Like, the room is freezing cold, but she is not that cold because she is buried under layers. And there I am just freezing. Like, no matter how many layers I put on, I'm still cold. I'm like, please, can we turn up the aircon? No. I don't know why I let her dictate what temperature the room gets to be, but sometimes as the older sister, you kind of need to pick and choose your battles. Anyway, we were staying in this pretty nice hotel, and in the shopping mall, literally, you sort of, because they're connected, you sort of walk out of the connecting, not a tunnel because there are shops, but you walk out of the connecting bit, and then maybe 2-3 minute walk away from the connecting part is a very, very nice bakery. That wasn't well explained. I'm realizing now I have a very convoluted way of explaining things sometimes. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is about a 5-minute walk from the lobby of the hotel, less than 5-minute walk from the lobby of the hotel, we come across this very nice bakery. And the bakery had not Hokkaido cheese tarts, but it was something starting with H. They had very nice cheese tarts. And they looked appealing. I bought a couple, one for me, one for my sister. We took them back to the room. We ate them. And then I immediately realized I should have bought extra because they were so good. Very velvety and not too sweet, very creamy. The next day we went back and we bought 6 and we split them and we ate them slowly over the rest of the time that we were there. But my point is, ever since eating those tarts, I have wanted to make my own. So this past weekend on Saturday, my sister and I did exactly that. We went out and we bought the ingredients. And it was, it wasn't actually too fancy. I mean, the fanciest ingredient was probably mascarpone, which is a type of fresh cheese. Yeah. So, I mean, I watched a couple of videos on YouTube. It seemed straightforward enough. And my sister and I had a crack at it. So, I mean, okay, let me rephrase. It's simple in the sense that, you don't really need any fancy equipment. None of the techniques are super complicated, but it is a bit of a hassle in the sense that you kind of have to let things cool down and chill in between steps. So we made everything from scratch. We made the tart shell, which is, I haven't made straight pastry before, but it was basically, butter, flour, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of vanilla extract, a little bit of lemon juice, lemon zest. Let that chill in the fridge. Then we didn't have the little individual tart shells, so we used a muffin tray and sort of packed it into the muffin tray. Then you bake it for 15 minutes. They came out looking pretty decent. I probably, in hindsight, should have left them in the oven for less because they get baked again once you fill them. And when they got baked the second time, they came out a little bit too dark. So, cooking, baking, it's a process of learning. You take lessons from every attempt. But then we got to the task of making the filling itself. And I mean, again, it's not theoretically, it's not that complicated because it's basically, throw all these cheeses into the pan, melt them, then add some flour, some sugar, some lemon juice. Yeah, some lemon juice and some vanilla extract and an egg yolk at the end. It really is just combine everything together and then pour it into the tart shells. Okay, but the thing is, when we were making it, the first time we tried to make it, the mixture split. And if you're not familiar with cooking, when something splits, when dairy products split, basically it means that the solids, the milk solids, the dairy solids separate from the liquid fat in the dairy product. So it turned out concerning. Like, it was going really well. Like, we had all the cheeses in there, we had the milk in there, we had the sugar in there, we were slowly melting it, and then in sort of the chaos of adding the final few ingredients, the mixture seized up and kind of split. And it turned into like this oily, but also very thick and almost completely unstirrable mess. Like, it was, by the time it had cooled down completely, it was solid. It was like a chunk. And I was sad, and I was also confused because I'm like, everything was going so well, and then suddenly it wasn't. It literally, like, in the space of 10 seconds, it went from pretty much, it went from, pretty decent looking to completely unusable. But that's cooking for you. Sometimes things are going well, and sometimes chaos ensues. We have an electric beater. And so, like, as a last ditch attempt, we did try and whisk everything back together with the electric beater, but no bueno. No, if anything, that just made it look like very suspicious looking scrambled eggs that you definitely do not want in your tart pastry. But alhamdulillah, we had enough ingredients to try again. So this time, take 2, I was like, okay, we just gonna go really slow. I'm gonna keep this heat as low as possible so that, nothing, so that, so that we have more time to do everything. I did try and troubleshoot, and I think one of the issues was the mixture was probably too thick in the beginning, because I use heavy cream instead of milk. I should have mentioned, because I watched like 2 or 3 different YouTube videos, I was kind of making my own recipe by combining 3 separate recipes together, which is something I do. It's kind of taking the best bits of each recipe and mashing them together and making them my own. So that is probably why it split the first. That is probably one of the reasons why it split the first time, is because I was trying to change too many things or incorporate too many things that didn't quite work together. But in the second round, what do? We reduced the heat. Like I said, we added more milk. We reduced the amount of sugar and also the amount of cornstarch. And we just took it really slow. I also really spent time making sure that the cheese in the beginning was really, really melted and the mixture was as smooth as possible before I added anything else. And, it kind of worked. Nothing seized. Everything looked nice and creamy. So I was happy. I should also mention that we were fasting at the time, so I couldn't taste. I was just like, well, it looks good. It smells good. I'm just hoping it tastes good. That's one of the things about fasting month and cooking in fasting month. Everything is kind of shooting in the dark, hoping that it tastes edible. So, after we'd made the filling, and the tart shells had cooled down to room temperature, we put the filling into the shells, and then you're supposed to let it chill and let the filling harden up in the fridge. So I think I ended up putting it in the fridge for about 50 minutes, and then in the freezer for the final 10 minutes to get it really firm. Then you brush the tops with egg wash, and then you put it in the oven to so that if you've ever seen a cheese tart, they have sort of very nice sort of brown not crusty tops, but they are, nice and brown and sort of bubbly tops in the way that melted cheese sometimes looks, right? When you have nice melted lasagna and you have the cheese all bubbly and nice on top. Yeah, that's what a cheese tart is supposed to look like. And they turned out quite good. I discovered in that process that I think there's like the center of my oven is not as hot as the sides of my oven, because the cheese tarts that were in the middle of my baking tray didn't really get brown, but the cheese tarts that were on the outside of my baking tray did get brown. So, you learn things about the hot spots of your oven and when you do the baking. When you bake. Everyone's oven is sort of temperamental and has their own personality. Like, I know that my oven, the front part of my oven is warmer than the middle and back part. Although now in hindsight, I think it's just the middle of my oven is not as hot as the sides. I digress. But yeah, they came out looking good. The tarts did, and they tasted pretty decent. I think they honestly tasted more like lemon, because we put lemon juice in the filling and the shell, and we put lemon zest in the shell. I think in future I still like the lemoniness because it sort of cuts the richness of the cheese. But I think in future I would put a little bit less lemon and probably a little bit more sugar, a little bit more vanilla, so that it's more desserty tasting. Right now it tasted quite, not savory, but it didn't taste sweet. It did, but it didn't taste sweet enough. But it tasted good, and I was quite proud of our first attempt. So definitely something to make again in the future. Also another con of mixing 3 recipes together and sort of adjusting things on the fly is that we still have unused filling. So we ended up with 8 tart shells. And even though we fill them to the brim with cheese filling, we still had a lot of leftover. So I've been meaning and telling myself to go and make more tart pastry, because it's really not that hard to make. But every day it keeps not happening. So I have a feeling that we're not gonna get any more cheese tarts this week, but who knows? Maybe I'll be motivated enough later today. We'll see. But yeah, that's the story of how I made cheese tarts. I'm very proud of how they turned out. And in future, I think I think there's room to modify. Like I imagine that like blueberry cheese or raspberry cheese tarts would taste really nice. And I think that now that I have a recipe for the tart shell, the shell itself, the shell on its own without the cheese filling, is actually really nice. It's not too sweet, nice flaky texture. I think that gives me the opportunity to play with like cream and like having the tart and then having some cream and then having some fruit on top. Possibly even like more jammy fillings. Yeah, I'm excited. I that's the thing about cooking and baking, is that once you have building blocks in your arsenal, you can sort of put them together in different ways and come up with many iterations of a similar dish. And I think that's one of the things I love about cooking, you know? Speaking of my siblings, and I will say that my sister and I, that was probably my sister and I cook together pretty often. But normally we always, especially when we bake, we always end up arguing or competing about something. Like, who gets to do what task, like who gets to mix, who gets to measure, who gets to shape, who gets to roll things out. But this was one of the few instances where we actually like functioned and we didn't really argue, and it kind of we worked together, and it was kind of magical. And speaking of my siblings, let us switch gears. And let me talk about my other sibling, my brother, who recently, and by recently I mean last week, made us watch a man cross Norway in a completely straight line. Yes, that's right. A man crossed Norway in a completely straight line. It's a video on YouTube. Actually, it's a 3-part series on YouTube. The series in total is probably about an hour and a half in length. And as bizarre as it sounds, it wasn't the worst thing he's made us watch. I mean, in my personal opinion, the worst thing he's made us watch is 2001: A Space Odyssey. But that's because I just don't understand the movie whatsoever. Monty Python is a close second behind that. Anyway, man crossed Norway in a completely straight line. Yeah, so you can look it up on YouTube and watch it yourself. I mean, if you're looking for something kind of weird and unique, it's not bad. But as a geographer, it was quite interesting. For those of you who don't know, I am a geographer, as in that is what I studied whilst I was at university. So, I mean, the series is kind of what it sounds. A guy starts from one part of Norway and crosses Norway in a completely straight line. Now Norway, I mean, for most of it, he was walking through like hills and forests and sometimes like swampy, boggy land. But I think, you know, you kind of have to admire people who have the dedication to follow through on something that they set themselves, something that they tell themselves they're going to do. Like this wasn't for charity. This wasn't for a dare. This was literally like he wanted to cross Norway in a completely straight line. And so he did. And I think, like, I don't think I would be, okay, I am not much of an outdoorsy person anyway, so, like, the hiking and whatnot doesn't appeal to me. But even, like, following through on a task as massive as that, like, I don't know if I have the same level of self-motivation and dedication. So, you know, you gotta admire people who can do that. I think, you know, like, it was in its own way pretty impressive. So you might be thinking, okay, I don't know, it's kind of something that is deceptively simple but also hard, because the premise is, okay, I'm just gonna cross this country in a completely straight line. But in practice, how does one actually make that happen? Because you're going to come across obstacles, you're going to come across cliffs, you're going to come across steep drops, you're going to come across lakes and rivers and swamps. And, you know, when you get to the urban areas, you're going to come across roads and railways and houses, like people's private property. So it was, I'm going to cross Norway in a straight line, but allow myself up to 25 meters of deviation from the line, either side. I think it was 25 meters. And I think, I mean, the furthest he deviated was about 28 meters. And that's because he had to climb down a very, very steep, like cliffside or mountainside. But I still think that's pretty impressive, you know, like it's not easy to have to navigate through miles and miles and miles of hilly terrain. I mean, I'm not sure if you know what Norway looks like, but if you look on Google Maps or Google Earth, you see that it's not, I mean, some of it is flat, but the part that he was walking down was quite undulous, quite hilly. There's also, and I was kind of surprised to see that there's quite a bit of planning that has to go into a mission like this one. Like you have to pick your route. If you are going to cross Norway in a straight line, but there are many straight lines to follow. So which straight line are you going to pick? Right? So you kind of want the route that minimizes the number of steep inclines that you have to cross, right? And that's basically what he went with. In total, he had to deal with 7 or 8. But yeah, like you need to plan how many days it's gonna take you, what your checkpoints are, because you need to make sure that you are safe, right? So he had to plan, like, okay, on this particular day, I'm going to cross this much land and I'm going to be here by the end of the day. And if I'm not there by the end of the day, then something terrible has happened to me. Like you have to do it in a safe way. And you have to have the right equipment. Like you have to have some sort of kayak if you're gonna cross water, or some mode of water transportation if you're gonna be crossing water. And it was interesting to watch the behind the scenes and the logic of how the mission unfolded. I don't know, if you want to watch something on YouTube that is a little bit different, I would recommend. As a consequence of watching that 3-part series, my YouTube recommendations were for a while, and kind of still are, a little bit all over the place, in the sense of like, okay, now I have recommendations from this guy's channel popping out in my feed, which, I mean, I'm not completely mad at, but also don't tell my brother, because I don't need him to have that kind of like hold or influence over me. Like I don't need it to get to his ego. Okay, so this is just between you and me. I watched a couple of his other videos. They were mildly interesting. I did somewhat enjoy them. I was not mad at the fact that they popped up in my recommended. But yeah, a guy crosses Norway in a completely straight line. You don't know what you're getting. I didn't know what to expect when I started watching, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. And it was actually mildly interesting and mildly funny at points. I think the most interesting bit, you'd think that the most sort of, well, no, let me rephrase. I think that crossing large large areas of rural landscape requires one type of planning. Like you need to be prepared for cliffs and swamps and lakes and sort of muddy terrain. But then you also need to plan for urban areas and what to do when you have to cross a gigantic motorway, what to do when you have to cross a railway, and what to do when you have to run through people's private gardens, which is what he had to do to reach his endpoint. Every step of the way presents challenges. And I'd be interested to know what if you had to pick a country to cross in a completely straight line, what country would you pick? And I mean, it's not as simple as, oh, I'm just going to pick. I mean, okay, fine. You could pick something like Singapore, which is like an island state, and it's pretty small, right? It's basically just a city. So the physical distance you have to travel isn't that big. But as a city, you kind of have to navigate the roads, you have to navigate the buildings, the subway lines. You know, it presents its own set of challenges. Like I was saying, like the challenges that you deal with in urban areas versus rural areas are very different. That being said, I don't think I would cross Russia. I don't think I would cross Russia or Canada or the US. Although it would be kind of cool to, I'm not sure about Russia, but at least in the US, like crossing it and like going through the different biomes. Like, I mean, I suppose it depends on what line you're crossing, right? Or Australia for the same reason, like going from like the cities to, I think that would actually be quite torturous. Like just the big Australian desert in the center. That would be quite the trek. Yeah, I don't know what country I would cross. I mean, okay, I know I would never do this because, like I said, I don't particularly like hiking and being outdoors. Neither do I have the self-motivation or the willpower to follow through on a mission like this. But yeah, it's an interesting question to think about. Perhaps some European country. I'm not sure what. It's like you don't want a country that's too big, but also within that, you don't want a country that's too complicated in terms of terrain and urban landscape. So it's a lot of planning needs to go into a mission as deceptively simple as crossing a country in a straight line. Or maybe, you're someone who doesn't think that's very simple, in which case, okay, our brains think differently. Fair enough. Okay, so we've talked about baking. We've talked about some YouTube videos and Norway and geography. A logical transition, therefore, is to talk about space. More specifically, cosmic themed pieces of furniture. Let me explain myself. Again, this is a story that needs a bit of backstory. Sometime last year, I think it was probably July of 2020, my family and I went on a holiday to Redang. Redang is an island off the coast of Malaysia, off the eastern coast of Peninsular Malaysia. It's off the coast of Terengganu, right? Very nice island. Lovely place. If you are in Malaysia and you want a holiday recommendation, I mean, not that we can really travel anywhere at this moment in time, but if you want a recommendation, Redang is a lovely place. Always happy to go there. But that's not my point. My point is not the holiday itself, but my point is actually the airport, Kuala Terengganu Airport. In the airport, there was a shop. I don't know why I took such a long pause between there was and a shop, because I think my brain stopped working for a second there. In the airport, there was a shop. And the shop was not manned. It was closed, it was wrapped up. But you could still see everything in the shop. In fact, most of the shops in the airport were closed or only partially operating, because this was in between lockdowns. Like Malaysia's first MCO, our first lockdown had relaxed, but not relaxed fully. So a lot of the shops were still closed. There weren't that many people in the airport, like not many staff in the airport. But in this shop, there was a tent. And when I say tent, I mean child's tent. Like the kind of tent that you would buy for your kid to play in and fill with their toys. Okay? So child-sized tent. Not camping tent. Child-sized tent. Right? There was a child-sized tent that I desperately wanted, because it was like a lovely dark blue, and it had yellow stars and white stars and moons all over it. It was really cute. The pattern was really, really cute. You might be asking yourself, why does she want a kid's tent? Well, that also requires a story. See, this is how I tell stories. Okay, this is sometimes how I tell stories. For you to understand the story that I'm trying to tell, you kind of also have to understand and appreciate 3 other stories to get the context. So, context 1 is, I saw a tent in this airport. Context 2 is, why do I want the tent? And to answer that question, I collect stuffed animals. Not from a collector's mindset, but sort of like from a, I think they're adorable and I want them all. There is a specific brand of stuffed toy. There's a specific stuffed toy manufacturer called Jellycat. You should go and look them up. Jellycat stuffed toys. They are the most adorable. They are so cute. You cannot not fall in, you have to fall in love with at least one of the stuffed toys on the site. They are so cute. Anyway, I have an extremely large collection of them. I have more than 20. Let's put it that way. I have many. And they live in my room, but they live in an IKEA, or IKEA, however you say it. IKEA, the IKEA kids tent. Like, you've probably seen it at some point in your life. It's red and yellow striped, and it has like blue trimming. But it's bright red and sort of orangey yellow. Like the colors are very jarring, and it looks like a kid's circus play tent, which is not necessarily a bad aesthetic, but it's also not the kind of aesthetic that I want in my room. It's in terms of construction, in terms of an actual tent that your kids play in, it's a great tent. I would recommend. But like in my room, it kind of, I've never really loved how it's looked. Also, if you're wondering, we have that tent because it used to belong to my brother. When he was small, he used to play in it. And then it got stored in the storeroom for a while. When we were clearing out the storeroom, I saw the tent and I was like, oh, I know what I can use that for. Okay. I didn't buy that tent with the intent. I'm saying tent so many times. How many more times can I say tent in one sentence? I didn't get the tent with the intention of using it to house my stuffies, but that's what its purpose became. Yes. So I've never really been a fan of the aesthetic of that IKEA child's tent. And therefore, when I saw the tent in the airport, the blue with the stars and the moons, I was like, yes, I want. Like, it was really cute and I really, really wanted it. And I was like, I will bring it somehow home with me. Like, we had to get on a flight. We had to take a flight home. I was like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to stuff it into my suitcase. I don't care. Like, I will bring it home. But the problem is, like I said, the shop was closed and there was no one working there. And I was at one point, like, seriously contemplating, can I, like, it was like an open air shop. That's the thing. Like, it wasn't like your standard shop that only has, like, you have to go through a door. This was like, sort of like, it was more of a stall in the middle of a court area, and like in the middle of an open area. So, I could have theoretically, taken the tent. I would have left money and a note. I wouldn't just steal it. But I was like, do I really want to do that? It's like, nah. It would make me feel guilty in the long term. Also, it is pretty much stealing. So I was like, okay, I shall be patient. Perhaps the tent will come to me at some other time. Okay. So I left that holiday tentless. And that holiday was, like I said, July of 2020. So I have been, like, wanting that tent ever since July of 2020. Now, back home, we went to a toy store. It's a local toy store, and they actually had the tent. The problem was, it was like 100 ringgit. And I was like, 100 ringgit for that tent? Oh, okay, I'm not sure. It just seems a bit much for a tent. But, like, I saw it, I contemplated it. I also didn't have my wallet on me at the time. I was like, okay, I'm not going to get it now. Perhaps some other time. You can guess, perhaps, that some other time didn't come, because the next time I went to that toy store, that same toy store, the tent was gone. And I was like, damn it, I should have bought it when I had the chance. I should have asked. I should have. But it wasn't to be. It wasn't to be. Perhaps, only Allah knows why I didn't get the tent the first time round or the second time round. Perhaps it wasn't the best quality, But I was very devastated. Like, I saw the tent that I really wanted, and I couldn't get it the first time at the airport. I couldn't get it the second time in the toy store, and I couldn't get it a third time at the same toy store, because the first time, because basically I was really upset that I didn't get this tent, and I really wanted it. Okay, I really, really wanted it. It was really nice. The pattern was really, really nice. And then, so wait, let me give you the timeline. The airport incident happened July of 2020, thereabouts. The toy store incidents, both of them, happened, probably December of 2020. And then, sort of November, December, January. November 2020 to January 2021. I'm not exactly sure, but thereabouts, right? And then, this past weekend, we went to a bookshop of all places, and I saw the tent. And I was like, I am getting it. I don't care how much it costs. I am getting it. To my surprise, it only cost 60 ringgit at this toy store. So perhaps, it all sort of came together. I was like, the tent is here. It is cheaper than I thought it would be. I can actually buy it because I have my wallet. I got the tent, and I was so happy. I was so pleased with myself. I was so thankful. Alhamdulillah, I finally get the tent of my dreams. I mean, not the tent of, well, it is the tent of my dreams, but it's not for me. It's for my stuffies. But, it's kind of for me. Because it lives in my room. So yeah, I got the tent. We came home. I assembled it. I have to say that the build quality is not as nice as the IKEA tent, and it's a little bit more of a hassle to set up, because you kind of have to, like with the IKEA tent, you basically just slide the tent rods into the into a tube of fabric and the tent sort of pops up in place. But with this blue starry tent, you kind of had to go inside and you had to finagle and you had to kind of tie things into place, tie the rods into place. And, it's not the easiest to set up, but the aesthetics, worth it. So yeah, now my stuffies have a new house. It looks very cute. It's much more pleasing to the eye. The red and the orange were really they were an eyesore. Sorry, I think I just hit my glasses on my mic. They were an eyesore. The really envision a red and yellow circus tent. Or actually just go look it up. Go look up the IKEA children's play tent. I'm pretty sure there's only one design. And you will see what I mean. So now I have a nice, calming, starry night tent, basically. And it just changes the vibe. I'm happy. I'm very happy. Yeah, so that was a very nice treat on a Sunday. Is any of this interesting, guys? I know I've just been talking about things that have happened to me lately, but I hope some of it is at least mildly entertaining. Like I said, in future episodes will have, I will try to make the episodes a little bit more coherent, a little bit more one topic. But the way I am and the way I talk, tangents and sort of digressions, they happen quite a lot. And I don't really have a script that I'm sticking to. I mean, I have an outline. I have a rough set of points that I want to hit. But other than that, it's kind of free for all, free flow. I talk about whatever comes to my head, and the words that come out of my mouth are the words that you get to hear. That's how speaking and hearing works. Yes, that's how speaking and hearing works. So speaking of IKEA, and speaking of assembling things, yesterday, my mother and I got a delivery of desk chairs. Now, I will admit, IKEA desk chairs, they do the job. They're not the best, but they do the job. So we, I will give IKEA some credit. We ordered on Saturday, I think. Yeah, we ordered on Saturday, and the desk chairs came on a Monday. So, pretty fast, pretty efficient service. I was quite impressed with them. What was I going to say? The desk chairs came, and I don't know about you, but I quite enjoy assembling IKEA furniture. It depends on the furniture, because some of the pieces can be quite complicated. Like if you need a power tool to assemble it, no thank you. That's not for me. Power tools are not my area of expertise. Kitchen power tools, like mixers and stuff like that. Yeah, I like kitchen power tools, but I don't like home building power tools. They kind of scare me. So I don't like having to assemble IKEA furniture that requires the use of power tools or hammers, but assembling pieces of IKEA furniture that only require you to use the Allen key that comes in the package, yes, I like doing it. It's like a gigantic puzzle piece, or it's like building a life-sized Lego set. I like building Lego sets. It's kind of, you're following instructions, and at the end of it, you have a pretty functional piece of furniture, and you get the satisfaction of having assembled it yourself. I know that some people don't enjoy the assembly process, and it's frustrating, or it's just not something they enjoy doing, which is fair enough. But for me, I don't know. I like doing things with my hands. I like following instructions, and I like the sense of accomplishment and satisfaction that comes with doing something myself. So I am now sitting on my new desk chair. I think it's the Marcus desk chair. It's not the most expensive one that they have. I don't think it's the cheapest either. It's not, and it is a bit of an upgrade. I have a little bit nicer back support. And my chair doesn't creak and make funky noises as much when I sit down. But, at some point in my life, I would like to upgrade to like a fancy desk chair, not like Herman Miller level. Like is it Herman Miller? The Herman Miller desk chairs like really look fancy. Like I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Herman Miller desk chairs, like there are some where you can like adjust like specific sections of the chair so that it contours exactly to the curve of your back. Like it's really like high tech, not high tech, but like really perhaps unnecessarily fancy, or maybe necessary for some people, but you can really, really, really adjust that chair to be exactly as you want it. I do want to invest at some point in my life when I have my own place, if that ever happens. I want to invest into a really nice, supportive, comfortable desk chair that allows me to sit, I don't know what you call it, but sort of crisscross applesauce. When you sort of fold your legs underneath you, I think some people call it sitting cross-legged Indian style, which is that racist? I'm not sure. But when you sort of fold your legs underneath you as if you were doing yoga or something, like I like to sit like that. And I like to sit with one leg underneath me when I'm sitting at my desk chair. And so I need a desk chair that has enough horizontal space for me to like fully be on it, but also be cross-legged. I know one of the solutions is to take the arms off your chair, but I like having arms on my chair. I like having somewhere for my elbows to sit and rest on. So like I'm on the quest kind of to find my perfect desk chair, and perhaps one day I will achieve my goals. But for now, I have a new desk chair. It is pretty nice, and I'm quite happy. And I will say, like, I think that a lot of us are working from home. If not fully, then at least partly, because of the COVID situation. And I will say, if you haven't invested in a good desk chair, please do. It really does improve your quality of life. And it does, because most of us are working for, long hours at a time, doing desk jobs. And I think it's in your best interest to get something that makes your working life more comfortable. Even if you can, and if your office allows you to, bring in your own desk chair. Like order in a nice desk chair that you can use that just makes your life a little bit more comfortable. Like we spend so many hours a day, so many hours a week working. I think it's in your best interest to make all of those hours as comfortable as possible. Like improve your quality of life as much as possible. Like your quality of life can only be improved so much when you're working, but improve it that much basically. You don't have to suffer. I mean, sometimes you do have to suffer while you work, but you don't have to like really suffer while you work. Like, get your space, your workspace as comfortable as possible. Not because of, it'll make you more productive. It'll improve your workflow. It'll motivate you to work more. Just from the pure perspective of, if your workspace is comfortable, at least you don't have to suffer because your workspace is uncomfortable. You get what I'm saying? Like, you already have to suffer because you have to work. You have to suffer because you have to work. You shouldn't have to suffer because you have to work in an uncomfortable place. This obviously doesn't apply if you work in like retail or food service or something. It's a completely different ballgame. But for those of us who work corporate, desk jobs, that kind of stuff, invest in things that make your workspace and your quality of life at work a little bit nicer. I am an avid believer of that. Yeah, so one of those things is getting a desk chair. And I will say, that was like 4 words in one. And I will also say that posture is important, and getting a desk chair, getting a proper desk chair, and sitting properly whilst you're working, and making sure that you are not hunched over looking down at your laptop, that you try and elevate your laptop, use an external keyboard and external mouse if you have to. Try and elevate your laptop or your desktop so that you are looking at it eye level, so that you don't develop cricks in your neck and aches in your shoulder and your back. Like, take care of your posture, people. Take care of your posture. You only have one spine, and spines, I don't think, can be replaced. Does this make me sound really Asian, like concerned over your posture? Does this make me sound like an Asian mom? If I have to Asian mom all of you, I will Asian mom all of you. Get a desk chair, sit properly, sit up straight, and you know, avoid unnecessary trips to the, not chiropractor. Is it orthopedist? Is orthopedist the one that looks at your bones? I think so. Anyway, just take care of your back is what I'm trying to say. Invest in a good desk chair. Take care of your back. You only have one. Yes, you only have one. So the final story that I have for you today, in a sort of perfect circle, is another cooking story. Yes, we've kind of come full circle. Well, almost full circle, because I started with a story about baking. I'm ending with a story about like actually cooking. And this happened sometime last week also. So here's the story. It is fasting month. At the time of me I don't know when I'm going to release this episode, but at the time of recording, it's fasting month. And on this particular night, we were making burgers from scratch. Burgers from scratch are really easy to do. You basically just get minced meat, put it, like kind of squash it into a patty, and then grill it or fry it. Like, if you're not making your burgers from scratch, you should, because it does, you can taste the difference. Anyway, on this particular night, we were making burgers for buka puasa, because again, when you're fasting, you can't taste. And burgers, you don't need to taste when you're cooking them. You kind of just fry them until they're, or grill them or fry them until they're cooked and they're sorted. Right. So my mom made the patties, and I was in charge of turning the patties into a fully fledged burger. Right. So I sliced the buns and I toasted the buns, got them all nice and crispy. I made gravy we use in place of burger sauce in this household, but I made the gravy, and then I heat up my pan and I'm getting ready to grill the burgers. And this is maybe like half an hour before Maghrib, so because you want the burgers to be hot when you eat, right? And if we cook them too early, they're going to get cold. That's what. So it's about half an hour before Maghrib. I'm getting my pan hot. I'm getting ready to fry the burgers. And I put in a little bit of oil and then wait for the oil to get hot. And then boom, I put the burgers in. And then I kind of walk away and do a little bit of cleaning. And I'm, because the way I do it is I put the burgers in when the pan is ripping hot, like screaming hot, like smoking. Like you can see the smoke coming out of the pan hot. I put the burgers in and then I leave them there so that they develop that nice brown char. The Maillard reaction. So I walk away and I notice that the sizzle isn't as loud as I'm used to hearing. Like, I know what the burgers are supposed to sound like when you cook. And this is the thing about cooking. The more you do it, the more, the bigger your database grows, and the more data points you have about how certain things are supposed to sound, supposed to smell, supposed to feel as you're cooking them. And you can pick up on certain visual cues. Like, I know when I make these burgers, there is smoke. There was no smoke, and there was also not much of a sizzle. And so I went back to the stove, and I realized that the fire is a lot smaller than usual. We have a gas stove, or at least the one that we used to cook with most often. We have a gas stove. We also have an electric induction stove. But most of the time we use the gas one because it's just nicer to cook with. So I turn up the gas, and not much happens to the actual flame. Like, the flame stays small, and then the flame dies, and I'm like, oh, we ran out of gas. So I don't know how things work where you live, but in our household, we use tongs of gas. So, like, it's a whole, like, this is metal canister, this gigantic 40-liter metal canister filled with gas that you hook up to your stove. And then, when the canister runs out, you replace it with a new one. So luckily, we had a spare canister ready to go. So I called my dad, and he assembled it. Bearing in mind, whilst he was, disconnecting the old one, putting in the new one, my burgers were still like half cooked in the pan. I was like, okay, I'm just going to use the electric induction cooker for now. So I quickly transferred them over to the electric cooker and turned up the heat and, let them cook on the other side. The thing why I don't like using the electric induction cooker as much, or the one that we have, is firstly, one of the burners is broken. Like, unfortunately, the largest burner on the electric stove is broken. So we only have the 3 smaller ones, which is an issue because the heat doesn't get distributed as well with the smaller ones. Plus, they don't get as hot. So not ideal for grilling a burger, because when you grill a burger, you really want that high heat so that you get the Maillard reaction and you get that nice crust on the outside of the burger. But, I was desperate. I was like, I just got to get the meat cooked because it's almost buka puasa and we need to eat. So I just put it on the electric stove, and let it cook. And my dad got the gas stove hooked up and ready, but, it wasn't like the lifesaver moment that I hoped it would be, because even though it was hooked up, it was like I don't know, it seemed like there was some sort of block, or maybe it wasn't connected properly, but the flame was still small. Even when I turned it up to max, even when I turned it up to the highest setting, the flame of the burner was still small. And beyond that, I could only use one burner at a time. I was like, okay, there's something wrong with this stove. You know what? I'm not going to deal with it. I'm just going to cook my burgers on the electric stove. And it was kind of hectic in the last 5 to 10 minutes before buka puasa. I had 3 burgers on the electric stove, 2 burgers on the gas stove, just because I didn't have space on the electric stove to put another pan. It was a little bit chaotic. It was a lot of me running back and forth between the 2 stoves, giving attention to all my children. And I was waving I had my little temperature meat probe in, so that I could stab the burgers and make sure that the insides were cooked, because you don't want to serve undercooked meat. It was chaos. I also took the burgers out, the electric stove burgers. They were really wet, which I think was because of the oil I put in. So I took them out to pat them dry with a paper towel. And then the paper towel sort of melted to the burger. Literally, it kind of became one with the meat. And I couldn't really scrape it off. And I was like, you know what? someone is just going to eat paper towel for dinner tonight. Or 3 people are going to eat paper towel for tonight because 3 of the burgers had paper towel sort of melted into the meat. It was very confusing. I was like, I can't deal with this. I don't have the capacity in my brain to problem solve right now. I'm just going to grill the burger some more with paper towel on one side. You know what? It's not the end of the world. I hope paper towel is edible and I hope none of us die. So yeah, I grilled the meat. And then once the electric stove burgers were done, I transferred the gas stove burgers over to the electric stove to finish cooking. Because again, the gas stove, the flame was nothing. It was like maybe 10 candles. They were tiny. Like 10 candles, maybe 12 candles in a ring, right? Imagine 12 candles in a ring. That's pretty much the level of heat that I was dealing with. It was a shameful imitation, a poor, shameful imitation of the powerful burner that I was used to. I was really upset with this flame, okay? I was really upset with this flame. So I transferred the gas stove burgers over to the electric stove and let them cook all the way through. I was also upset because I couldn't do my cheese trick. And the cheese trick is basically normally when I cook burgers, when they're almost done, I put a handful of cheese or I put a slice of cheese on top and I put some water in the pan and then I cover the pan with the lid, and the steam and the heat melts the cheese and you get this really lovely melty cheese on top of your burger. I couldn't do that trick because I was just focused on making sure the burgers were cooked. I was like, you know what? We can have cold cheese. It's fine. In the end, alhamdulillah, food is food, and they tasted edible. They tasted decent. It's meat, cheese, and gravy in a bun. Yeah, maybe there was some charred paper towel bits on there. Well, honestly, it wasn't the worst thing that's come out of my kitchen. And when you're fasting and you just want food, you're not that picky. Honestly, you're not that picky. And like I said, it tasted quite good. But yeah, perhaps the most stressful experience of cooking burgers I've had in a while. I'm quite good at cooking, in the sense of when cooking, I'm quite good at keeping level-headed and sort of problem solving, and if something isn't going to plan, I can sort of adjust and change the menu as needed, or modify things as needed. But this was my cooking utensil, my cooking instrument is not functioning. How am I supposed to cook? I was at one point I was seriously contemplating what if I put the burgers in the oven? What if I just put the burgers in the oven and let them bake? Bake burgers, anybody? I was pretty desperate. I was I just have to get food cooked before 7:22 so that we have something to eat. It was chaotic. Oh, I should also say, I forgot to mention that we also had a steak that we cooked up into strips. That we cut up into strips and I grilled quickly, because to have a backup fajita thing. We were already going to cook it. We were already going to cook those things because we had 5 burgers, and then in case anyone was still hungry, we had those strips of beef that could be eaten on their own, or that could be turned into sort of a fajita beef wrap. So alhamdulillah, I did cook those very quickly so that when buka time came, when it came time to break our fasts, we had little bits of beef to eat whilst the burgers were still, doing their thing, trying to get cooked. It wasn't the smoothest cooking experience that I've had ever. It wasn't the worst, but you live, you learn, and now I know that in a pinch, the electric stove isn't the worst. It can do burgers. It does burgers a little slowly, but it can do burgers. it was a wild time, guys. It was a wild time. I was stressed. I took a shower before cooking burgers, and then I took a shower after cooking burgers because I was like, I'm too stressed. I'm too stressed, and also I smell of smoke and meat. So I need to have another shower. Well, that's all we have time for today, folks. I hope that you've enjoyed yourself. I hope that these stories have been mildly entertaining. Next week, I will come with a slightly more structured episode. I'm not sure what exactly it's going to be about, but I promise you it's not just going to be like an eclectic mishmash of stories like today's was. Today, I really just wanted to sit down in front of the mic and sort of get through the hurdle of recording my first episode and sort of bite the bullet and just do it, you know, because if you don't do the first one and if you don't sort of live through the awkwardness of doing the first one, how are you going to get to the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth? You know, you kind of have to just force yourself to sit down, even though you don't really have a structure or a plan, and just record. So that's what I'm doing. Thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for listening. If you've got a topic suggestion or a question or a comment or something that you want me to talk about and discuss on the pod, why don't you send an email over to occasionallyinsightfulpodcast@gmail.com. That's occasionallyinsightfulpodcast@gmail.com. Occasionally is spelled with 2 C's, 1 S, 2 L's. You should also, if you're on Twitter, you should give me a follow. It's @pod_insightful. And, you know, if you're so inclined, why don't you hit that subscribe button and give this video a like, maybe leave a comment, maybe even ring that bell, you know, do all the things. And you know, all the support is much, much, much appreciated. Does this make me a YouTuber? Does this make me a YouTuber? Kind of, in a sort of inadvertent way. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. And until next time, take care, everyone.